I remember the first time I went to Europe, I was invited to go on a trip. It was like a medical conference in Ireland. And I remember when I was eating bread there, I was like, this is crazy. I don't have the brain fog that usually would accompany it. I could eat it once or twice, and then the brain fog would hit. And there I could pretty much eat, bread almost every day without having issues. We know glyphosate, it does damage the ecosystem. It can damage insects, earthworms. Actually, what you'll find in farming in the soil, you have to wait 5 years if you're trying to switch your farm land over to organic. There's some very interesting research on diseases like leukemia. And we see that in farmers who are having this, or even lymphoma is a common cancer that's attributed to it. Right now, I think there's about 2,200 class action lawsuits that are geared towards the use of glyphosate. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Health Accelerator Challenge of the week. And I'm so happy to be with you tonight. It's just me, and so as you guys come in, just want to welcome you. Ask any questions. Today is going to be a fun one, and I'm going to go through the differences between the food in Europe and the food in the United States, and then we're going to talk about trends. I just returned from a trip of a lifetime. I was in Switzerland, and hopefully I can show some pictures as we go through this, because it was just a magical place. And as I was there, I was thinking, what is it about, what are the policies that the country that we made as in the United States versus the policies made in the European Union that created this opportunity where there's, either a lot of really healthy, abundant food, very clean, versus, like in the United States, we have to be very careful about what we eat, because so much of it's been sprayed with chemicals. So if you've ever wondered and questioned, some of the differences between the countries, today will not be, it's not going to be a super in depth, but it's going to be I'm going to share a few things that I've observed on my time in Europe, and some of the policies that I wish the United States would have made a long time ago. So how many of you have noticed when you go to Europe that you can eat bread and not feel sick? Or, in my case, as you guys know, I had Hashimoto's. And gluten is such an exacerbator for anybody who has thyroid issues. You do want to avoid gluten and be very careful with it. But I do find that, I remember the first time I went to Europe, I was invited to go on a trip. It was like a medical conference in Ireland. And I remember being there with some friends of mine, these doctors who invited me, and we went and visited different castles, and it was so amazing. And I remember when I was eating bread there, I was like, this is crazy. I don't have the brain fog that usually would accompany it. Usually it would be like, I could eat it like, one or two times. I could eat it once or twice, and then the brain fog would hit. And there I could pretty much eat, bread almost every day without having issues. And so it was pretty amazing, because in Europe they banned the use of glyphosate, and so glyphosate is something that is everywhere in the United States, and so it's pretty toxic. And so if you look at the European Union, they have what's called the European Food Safety Authority, or the EFSA, and we have the Food and Drug Administration. And while both agencies are very important, there's just different policies that have guided a lot of the food industry. And in the United States, we have a country that's arguably, our fertile soil. We have the Great Plains. the Midwest, like you just can't find greater farmland almost anywhere on the planet. Then you look at the Snake River Basin where I grew up, the amount of potato farming that's just incredible there. But as is true to the American kind of thinking, is more is always better. And so we said, well, if there's ways that we can increase our yield, and even if it requires some chemicals that, if you spray chemicals out in the potato fields, and the farmer said, please don't, stay away from the fields for 3 days. It's kind of interesting when we have that policy when, and we're eating that stuff, and so there's just some questions that I've asked along the way. And while I was on this beautiful trip in Switzerland, I just, I thought maybe we could just do our Health Accelerator challenge and just kind of talk about the differences and talk about some of the things you want to avoid. So one of the things are the natural and the synthetic food additives. And one of those is aspartame. And aspartame is something that adds sweeteners to food. And it's a really tough sweetener on the gut. And actually, in certain studies, they found, and aspartame, by the way, is massive in drinks like Diet Coke. And it's not necessarily, doesn't have Europe does not have a ban necessarily on it. But they do regulate its use in food and beverages more so than the United States. And the regulations, it varies from country to country in Europe. And in certain countries like Switzerland, from what I can read, is it's pretty much forbidden. In other countries like United Kingdom, Spain, France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, they've found it to be safe for human consumption, and they do allow its use. So there's interesting things that you want to look at. But I think one of the biggest things is the way that the food is produced and the amount of Roundup use. Several European countries have banned specifically glyphosate, and Austria is one of those, Belgium, France, Switzerland. And the nice thing about that is that allows you to have a little healthier foods without so much use of glyphosate and different pesticides and herbicides being sprayed on it. So, and I'm going to share with you guys a couple of pictures here. And I'll show you some of the things that we do when we travel. So I love, when I go and travel, I love being active when I travel. And so one of the big purposes of this trip was mountain biking. So I've got a picture right here, and I'm going to try and pull this up, and I'll share with you guys some of my experience, because this was a dream trip. Actually, so here's me. This is in an area called Arosa, and this is Arosa is a gorgeous place where there's a couple different resorts, and this is this beautiful trail in the Arosa area that I was able to take down. And my wife and I we averaged 25,000 steps a day when we were there. And then when we mountain biked, it was mountain biking about 20 miles a day, and it was downhill in the mountains there. If you just imagine, there's just peaks and gorgeous valleys everywhere. And I actually, I just found it so inspiring. I mean, I love the Utah mountains. But if you think of Switzerland and the area that we were in, the Alps, it's like you take the Utah mountains and all of our gorgeous peaks, and then you multiply that by 1,000. It just seems like the mountains never ended. And so this gives you just kind of a little snapshot of what it looks like. And I'll pull up a couple other pictures. But one of the things that I do when I travel is I find a lot of us, it's very difficult to eat healthy when we travel. Some people are just not into exercising when they travel. My wife and I, and when our kids are with us, it's the same. We make it, the big part of the travel experience is to make sure we're eating healthy. We're very, physically active, making sure that we are planning, different activities, walking, hiking, things like that. It's a big deal for us. And then when it comes to food, we try to get apartments or places that have kitchens so that we can cook our own food, at least for breakfast and lunch. And then for dinner, we find some creative places to eat out at, some local farm to table. This is, once again, this is in that same area near Arosa. And this one's closer to the Lochs Flynn area where we also mountain biked, and just a really cool scene there. But yes, if you look at when you travel, I think, think about where you're going. And I always like to go someplace where I know there's going to be good food. I look for places where I can do cold plunges when I get there to reset my circadian rhythms. And then also, I also want to find places that have lots of physical activity so that I'm more drawn to that. And even if it's visiting a city, then I'll make sure that we walk around, for the majority of the time. What do you guys do when you travel? I'd love to hear from you. And then I'll share with you, with some of the natural organic farming that happens in the United States. There's a big trend towards people coming back to the natural way of doing things. And World War II, if you think about it, when we lost some of the massive transportation and big industrial complex, farming complex, and especially in Europe, it was the focus on the small farms that really made things thrive. And so, we know glyphosate, it does damage the ecosystem. It can damage insects, earthworms. Actually, what you'll find in farming in the soil, you have to wait 5 years if you're trying to switch your farm land over to organic. It takes 5 years to make that transition from soil to actually be qualified as organic, because it kills earthworms 2 feet below the surface. And that the earthworms are what are creating, they're basically tilling the soil so that you have the proper levels of nutrients and bacteria in the soil. The other thing that's happening when we're spraying glyphosate is the soil biota it's more prone to yeast overgrowth. And these harmful chemicals, what we're seeing is, not only are we finding that there's more resistant forms of weeds growing up, but we're also finding that there's less nutrients that are in the food overall, because there's less biodiversity in the soil, because the soil health is no different than the gut. And in Eastern medicine, they say we are the microcosm of the macrocosm. And so one of the things that you want to be looking at is are these foods, do they have chemicals in it? Pesticides, glyphosate's a big one that we're talking about today. And then you want to look at the plastics as well. And so some of these things, hopefully as you worked with the team so far, you're starting to see that there's some big opportunities here. But even though in Europe, there's a lot less glyphosate, in certain countries there has been quite a bit sprayed. And so many of the farmers, they're shifting back to this non-chemical weed management that allows them to have greater soil biodiversity. And then that will require fewer agrochemicals. And so that makes for a cleaner environment, cleaner air, higher quality of food, and impacts everything in our life. And so it's interesting because in 2017, there's a big, the European Commission and member states, what they did is they sought out to ban glyphosate entirely. And so they're looking to phase all of it out of the country, out of all of the European countries, 100% by 2035 is the goal. And I think this is, it's a company, an organization called the European Biodiversity and the Farm to Fork Strategy, in cutting the pesticide use almost entirely. Whereas in the United States, our use of it is only growing. And And one of the things that happens is you've got this gene called the cytochrome P450. And when that gene is exposed to glyphosate, our bodies lose the ability to absorb and get rid of chemicals, but we also lose the ability to absorb vitamin D. The other thing that happens with glyphosate is it mimics glycine. And so glycine is interesting because what glycine does is it's in the connective tissue in our joints. And so when you have glyphosate there, then glycine can't bind with the other amino acids. And so you have this imbalance in the joints. And that's one of the reasons why people need knee replacements earlier than ever. They have joints that deteriorate. They're in a lot of pain, is because of the glyphosate. And so I think one of the best things that Europe is doing, and they've done differently as far as policies go, is they've cut out the use of expanded glyphosate in the farms, and so more organic farms are there. There's smaller communities. When you go to places, I find it really fascinating that in the United States, it's rare that you can find a restaurant. Well, it's more prevalent these days where you can actually see the list of farmers that they work with. In Europe, when you ask, oh, is this from local herds, the meats, or is this local wine or whatever it may be, but and they look at you kind of funny, like, well, of course it is. Why would we do it any different? And in Europe, it's a lot harder to transport things than it is in the United States with our big freeway systems. But now they're starting to see that in the United States, we're seeing the wisdom of that. And so now regenerative farming's really coming on big time. And people are starting to see that it's made a big change in our overall life expectancy, our overall health. And so I think it's really exciting. So one of the things that you can do if you have had glyphosate exposure, and if you're or if you're curious about it, there's a really powerful binder that we use from Cellcore. It's called HM and ET, so heavy metals and environmental toxins. And the other thing that you can do on a regular basis is apple cider vinegar. And I discovered that over 20 years ago and started using it. And I just noticed I felt better after I ate. I digested things better. But it's a great way. It's one of the ways that you can help metabolize and push glyphosate out. It's also a great way that you can activate that cytochrome P450 gene so that you can detoxify, because some of the studies that show that not only can glyphosate impact your gut, it's a registered antibiotic, but it also has there's some very interesting research on diseases like leukemia. And we see that in farmers who are having this, or even lymphoma is a common cancer that's attributed to it. And so there's right now, I think there's about 2,200 class action lawsuits right now that are geared towards the use of glyphosate, and specifically targeting Bayer Medicine, who Bayer now owns Monsanto, who was the maker of Roundup. So pretty interesting. So it's, in certain cases, there's been sales reps who literally will tell you can drink the stuff. And I guess there's a video circulating out there where they're like, hey, you drink it, and you drink it first, and I will. And the salesperson's like, no way. But yeah, there's interesting things is, once Roundup is there, it's more toxic if it's wet versus when it's dry. But either way, there's cases of birth defects, cancers, hormone disruptions, spontaneous miscarriages, issues with fetal development. It's not only carcinogenic, but as far as testosterone levels go, I see our clients. I had one of our clients who his testosterone levels were in like the 200s, 250s, and he's in his 20s. living in Iowa. And once we started getting him on the glyphosate detox, his testosterone, that with some peptides just shot up. So what's the best way to treat it as far as peptides go? Some of the best peptides you can utilize, and I would take notes on this, but number one is KPV. It's a tripeptide. And this tripeptide, what it does is help seal up the leaky gut, because glyphosate, because it's a registered antibiotic, it disrupts the gut flora. It can be a big cause of leaky gut, and so KPV can seal it up. And so that's one. The other one is BPC 157, and BPC 157 is really powerful because it is not only is it regenerative, it helps create better vascularity in the body. It can help support the joints that are compromised by glyphosate exposure. But the other thing it can do is it can also help heal leaky gut. One of the early studies on the stable version of BPC, and there's different versions of BPC 157, they're not all created equal. So if you've ever been like, oh, I really got great results with BPC, and then you tried it again and you didn't get such good results, well, there's a good chance that you got the wrong kind of BPC 157, or it wasn't the stable version. And so, but you can use BPC as an oral version, and it's a great way of sealing up the leaky gut. The other peptide you can use is LL37, because that's a peptide that helps reverse scarring. It also helps with leaky gut. It helps destroy any kind of pathogen. So if you think of some of the pathogens that exist, is if you've got long-term exposure to glyphosate or Roundup, then this is where you can have yeast that overgrow. And so that's where LL37 can come in and eradicate some of that yeast overgrowth. And then the other peptide that isn't talked about much when it comes to the gut and the but it is talked about with the immune system. It's ABP7, but ABP7 has also been shown to help protect the CD34 stem cells that get released from the small intestine, so that you can actually replace your intestinal lining quicker. So I find that there's just so many things that can happen, but one of the reasons we put our clients on CellCore, the first phases, the first 4 steps of CellCore, whenever they start a program, is because we want to get rid of all those environmental toxins. I think, when I was in Switzerland, I actually went and visited one of our clients there. And it was really cool because it's really hard to get peptides over to customs. And I mentioned to him when we were on a call, I said, well, I'll be coming to Switzerland in about a month. And I said, if you meet me there, I can bring you all your peptides. And so it worked out great because able to get peptides for him and his wife and his daughter. But what we ended up doing is, he's talking about, hey, I have so many people in Europe that would love these services. So, maybe in Europe sometime we'll have the eastern part of the world and the western part will truly be aligned. But I don't know that we'd have to use as much CellCore. Probably still would, because so much of Europe has unfortunately done used glyphosate and Roundup. But really the reason we use the CellCore is because of the humic and fulvic acid, the citric acid. There's chlorella. These are all things that help, bind up with the glyphosate and pull it out of the system. And the other thing that we do is make sure that you've got the good like prebiotics. So this is where getting your resistant starches in. You can also use colostrum, and this is where there's a formula from Orthomolecular called SBI Protect, and it's got the immunoglobulins from colostrum, and so it seems to work really well at protecting things. And then you want to do work on the liver. So, Chai Hu is a really good formula for it. Huang Lian, these are great things to help get get that glyphosate out of your system. So, and there's so many other things that you can do, but I think the biggest thing is you're looking at your body, you're looking at your health. You say, where are the interferences? Where are the things that are getting in the way? And what can I do to remove those? Because, at East West, we have big, ambitious goals for your future. Our goal is we want to make sure that you have the healthiest 10 years, the next 10 years, your healthiest 10 years. And so we also want to make sure that you've got this incredible capability of understanding the things that are going to get in your way. And so the challenge for the week is to figure out what in your life, where you're being exposed to chemicals that might just be that death by 1,000 cuts, that thing that's just getting in the way of you feeling and looking and performing your best, and get rid of that. And so that may be, buying more organic food, or really determining if it's organic food, like get real granular and figure out, is there a local farmer, or can you grow your own food? That's even the best. And I would just say, our food is so important, and what we put in our body is so critical. I notice when I go to places where the food is incredibly clean, the water's clean, and there's just a whole different energy in that space and in the environment, it makes a big difference. And so I think each one of us, if this week figure out what we can do to just live a little cleaner, I think you'll notice a big improvement in your health. So I appreciate you guys being part of the community. I hope I didn't indulge too much in my own personal adventures in Europe and my experiences, but I do find that there's just a whole different energy, and even the energy around how food's eaten. They want you sitting at the table for hours. My wife and I always forget, oh yeah, we need to ask for the check, because it's a whole social experience there. And I love that, but I only love that for one meal a day, which is why I find that, if I make my own food when I travel, this is a little hack that I have is, making breakfast and lunch and being very clean. And then for dinner, you can be a little more loose, and then making sure that you're exercising even more, because nothing better than to get your body feeling great when you're on vacation. So appreciate you guys. And challenge for today is just, let's get figure out how we can clean things up. I appreciate that, Allison, and really good to have you guys on. And we have several new members that have joined the program. And so you guys are amazing. So welcome. The new people. Joan, thanks so much. Georgia, good to see you. Dora, awesome having you on. Irene, Michelle, awesome to see you in the airport, by the way. That was really cool. I saw Michelle on my way to Switzerland. He and his wife were just leaving. So awesome to have you guys here. Bill, so good to see you. Alan, awesome that you were able to make it. And there's so many others that I just want to thank you guys. And so you guys enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And thanks for welcoming me back, Irene. Always good to be back. I mean, that's the one thing, every time I come home, I'm like, man, I just love Utah. And I love I was talking to one of you today, Jeff, you remember this conversation, but I was talking to you and we just said, do you realize how fortunate, how blessed we are? You just got back from your trip from New York. I just got back from Switzerland. I couldn't imagine doing these things when I was a kid. I mean, I always had dreams of traveling and going to places, but I just find it so rewarding. And I'm always so grateful to come back because of you guys. You guys just light up my life, and I appreciate you. So thanks. And if you enjoyed it, I'm going to be, I'm creating a whole article on Medium. So make sure I'm trying to post some things there. So check it out there, or LinkedIn, and I'll be posting more pictures of my Europe trips. So, all right, we'll see you guys next week. Yeah, and Dora, you lived in Europe for 8 years. Where did you live? What part? Germany. Isn't Germany so clean? What part of Germany? Were you in the um, Bavarian area or up in the Alps? I mean, in Switzerland, yeah, they speak German, Swiss, Frankfurt, Worms, south of Frankfurt. Wow, what a gorgeous place. So 2 hours from, yeah, you're right there. Holy cow. Well, hopefully this created some nostalgia for you, Dora. And so excited to be able to work with you again. And really appreciate you guys. And I will see you next week. And so, yeah, clean things up, get rid of glyphosate. That's the challenge for the week. Talk soon. Bye-bye.